inquiry. Hello, Aaron. Welcome aboard.
And
Thank you very much.
And we'll be talking about CFI today.
We will be talking.
About
we forced him at gunpoint to come here.
And finally, on the phone right now, we have. You introduce yourself. Randy Tyson.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm the Supreme Reverend Dr. Randy Tyson, host of the Legion of Reason Diversion podcast here in Calgary, and that's pretty much it.
Well, you're a PhD doctor, aren't you not?
Yes, a real doctor, like I try to say.
Like a medical doctor.
No, not like a medical doctor. No. Those are fake.
Or like I actually have a PhD doctor.
Yes.
In chemistry.
Yeah, chemistry and biochemistry.
I failed chemistry about 17 years ago in my backyard. Some people know that, some people don't.
Yeah, definitely. So, today we're going to be talking about the Black Lives Matter and social justice warriors and like what everyone thinks about those things. And I hear that you have a lot to offer us on that.
If you could tell us what the hell those things are, because there's probably some misconceptions. Maybe you can clear that up.
Well, I think everybody has their own definitions, which is part of the problem, of course. But something like social justice, I've always considered to be a wastebasket term of involving human rights, that kind of thing. And I'm not against all forms of social justice, by the way. It's just the modern brand of it, which seems to have gone off the rails and is really a caricature of what it once was. And it's this, especially things like trigger warnings at universities. This drives me nuts.
Oh, God, yeah.
There are a bunch of sensitive people who are getting offended over basically and pseudo-activists. That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's basically a social justice warrior. I mean, I was talking with one of my co-hosts today, Christine, and we were discussing social justice warriors and my definition of virtue signaling, which I think is, it's absolutely fine to stick up for somebody. Somebody's making a racist remark or whatever, but all too often, it's more about standing up for people who never asked you to do that in the first place.
Yeah,
and that's what I consider to be virtue signaling. I mean, everybody. This is the modern era. Almost everyone. There's very few exceptions, and they're very rare. They have a voice today. It's called the internet. You get out there and raise your voice. People are now speaking for people, and it's even though they don't belong to a particular group that claims to be disadvantaged, and it just, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way. It's like look what I'm doing for you. It's really what's the word?
Sounds like they're trying to defending.
Well, it's basically more about them than it is about the group that they're trying to defend.
Feel good about it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not altruistic in any sense whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned. That's the kind of social justice advocacy that drives me bananas. But of course, we can go back to the trigger warnings, because trigger warnings are something that is so antithetical to the purpose of a university. Because university is, if we're talking about safe spaces, we're talking about safe from physical harm. Oh, absolutely. Everywhere should be a safe space. But if we're talking about ideas, the university should never be a safe space. Universities are there to assess and discuss ideas. Doesn't matter whether you agree with them or not. That is what a university's purpose is. You're supposed to be exposed to these ideas. And I just don't get it today. People want trigger warnings because, there's some people who've suffered trauma, etc. At the cost of discussing ideas. Well, there's a problem here. Even if I thought that would be helpful, I would be against trigger warnings. Turns out trigger warnings are actually harmful to the mental health of people. They've looked at trauma survivors or earthquake survivors in Turkey, for instance. And it turns out that the people that do best are ones that had the opportunity to confront their demons, so to speak, because it allowed them to take control. A trigger warning does two things. It enables, it's enabling behavior. It says, well, we'll let you not be exposed to this idea, and it just enables people to stop from doing that, and prolongs that delay to actually, getting help or confronting the idea. And also, it robs somebody, it robs people of taking control of their lives.
Can you give us an example from a university?
From a university, I think a rape victim would be, in a law, say law school, learning about rape law. And this is another thing about trigger warnings. Well, everything can be a trigger, so it's a fool's errand to try and have a trigger warning for everything. It makes no sense.
It seems, I think Richard Dawkins said that actually here in BC when he was on stage with Matt Dillahunty, if I remember correctly, and that was the one thing Matt Dillahunty disagreed with him on. They didn't really get to it. Do you remember that, Aaron? The safe spaces thing.
Hold on, we're losing him.
The one thing Matt Dillahunty disagreed with him on. Are you there, Andy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
sorry.
We can hear your stuff in the background.
That's what it was, yeah. We thought we'd lost.
Oh. Yeah, I can hear it too. I don't know where it's coming from. It's not coming from my feed.
Okay, either way. So this is like PC regressive left stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's very much in the regressive left area. And I was just listening to Mel Brooks talk about. Yeah, I've heard John Cleese talk about this as well before. Is the politically correct culture that is coming up is killing comedy. A movie like Blazing Saddles could not be done today. It would just, and that's a shame, because Blazing Saddles is actually a parody of racism. It makes fun of it. That's exactly what you need to do. That's how you kill bad ideas. Is you take it to an extreme and you show the absurdity of it.
So then you weren't offended by the Bill Maher N-word comment then?
Slip of the tongue, no problem.
I thought it was a quote from, what's that book called, Gone with the Wind?
I don't remember the N-word coming up on that.
Negative attacking way, so I didn't really have an issue with it, but people lost their shit.
Yeah, and that's the problem. People too easily today lose their shit. I'm going to tell you where this comes from. At least I think. I'm not the only one who thinks this, by the way. Jonathan Haidt has said as much as well, and that is parenting. Parenting is the primary problem. That it became. We ended up with helicopter parents that wouldn't allow their children to be exposed to harm, and that included harmful ideas. So children never learned how to handle ideas that they don't agree with or they haven't heard before. And this is a big reason why we're seeing this at universities now. And
yeah,
it's the tail wagging the dog is what's happening now.
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old daughter, 6.5, and I've told her stuff about pedophiles and kidnapping and stuff like that, and it upsets her, but she's got to know.
Yeah, I used to watch horror movies when I was
6-year-old. You know what, Randy? It's almost like we're at this point in time where my right to offend somebody is trumped by their right to not be offended. What do you think of that?
Oh, but do we have a right to offend? Not so much a right, but I think that offense can be a rhetorical tool. I mean, some people need to be offended to get shocked out of a position that is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So why can't nobody, as you're kind of implying, no one has the right to go through life not being offended.
Exactly.
And in fact, it's harmful to try.
Yeah.
Because you can't handle it after, if you go through your formative years, never encountering an idea that is different than yours even. And I'm not even talking offensive. You end up with these entitled college brats, and that's all I can say about them is that they haven't grown up.
Exactly. Have you traveled much, like overseas?
A bit, yeah.
Yeah. So you might have seen some things that are cultural over there that we don't necessarily think of that are very offensive. For example,
Same
like
with
when
Aaron
you do
too, yeah.
the OK symbol in
Oh
certain
yeah,
countries,
yeah. It's very
it doesn't.
culturally different in some places, like Italy.
It means you're gay.
Oh.
Or there's
Well,
other things. It's also
Hey,
basically GFY.
what's up?
Go fuck yourself.
go fuck
Oh,
yourself.
GFY.
Why?
Well, we
Sorry,
talked.
GFI.
We interviewed on CIVL however long ago. We were talking about everything on Facebook. Was if you criticize Islam, you automatically hate all Muslims.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Islamophobia.
Well, we
Islamophobia.
talked about this last night on our podcast with Yasmin Mohammed and Armin Navabi. And Islamophobia is a made-up word. It has no meaning, but it's been engineered specifically to stop any kind of. We do the same. We do this with Christianity. We criticize Christian ideas all the time, but you try to do that with Islamic ideas. Now that's Islamophobic. So it's an attempt at shaming people like us who are criticizing tenets of Islam or some of the cultural, semi-cultural, religio-cultural things like female genital mutilation. And of course, it doesn't work anymore because you know all these terms like racist and Nazi and Islamophobe, they're just tossed around like Halloween candy. You know, it has no power anymore. They've removed the power of the word entirely, which is it's like the boy cried wolf. It's exactly that.
Well, you can't silence people. It's like this Nazi thing where they're saying punch Nazis. Well, then that means the Nazi can silence you and punch you. So,
the thing about punching Nazis, way to make a martyr out of the Nazi.
Yeah.
You just shot yourself in the foot. I was watching, just before we came on, I was watching, have you ever heard of Beverly Hills Antifa? It's a Twitter account. It's a parody, but they have the real thing on there, and the black Antifa members were trying to get the white Antifa members to punch Nazis so that the blacks wouldn't have to go to jail. And the white guys are like, what? Yeah, it was hilarious, and it was. If you want a lesson in identity politics, here, have a listen to this.
You're still white. You're still responsible. This is your fault. You're inherently racist. It's in your blood.
It's in your DNA. Listen to this. You're still white. You're still responsible. This is your fault. You're inherently racist. It's in your blood. It's in your DNA. That symbolizes everything I hate about identity politics.
Racist. I've heard that all white people are racist because they benefit from institutional racism.
Yeah, and show me that there is institutional racism. That's a really big claim.
And
people are saying, we have white privilege, and then on the other hand, everybody in North America has privilege because we live in North America. But they won't accept that.
Yeah.
But they also say if you're not white, you can't be racist, and that's such bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, first time I ever encountered that, Nate Phelps and I were on Facebook, and we're messaging each other. Did you just read that? And so, it comes out of critical race theory, which is one of the most racist theories of social theories that's ever come out of academia. Social justice has become what it hates. It is racist and sexist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you talk about like grouping and othering, then you're going to come up that's going to come up, right? And people have to see that.
Well, I liken identity politics to astrology. Instead of being born under a particular sign, you're born with a particular gender and skin color, and that determines who you are. Everything, every aspect, how you vote, how you think. This is what identity politics has become. And of course, it says just like astrology, it says absolutely nothing about who anyone is, what their character is.
Exactly.
It's just insanity, and this is why I agree totally with Sam Harris. And Tyler, you sort of pushed
that article.
That article, yeah, and
Yeah.
I am totally disgusted by identity politics, and if it doesn't stop, it will tear the country apart.
Sam really said what was in that article. I could be wrong, and I don't want to misrepresent Matt Dillahunty for agreeing with the article against Sam, but I watched the interview, and it didn't sound like he was saying that black people shouldn't be able to group together under, race protecting each other, that they should ban under humanism or whatever. It sounded like Sam was just saying that the BLM, a large portion of them, are just making it worse for everybody by being violent instead of doing the Martin Luther King thing.
Yeah, well, look at the founding members of Black Lives Matter. When I went down this rabbit hole, it got weirder and weirder. The founding members of Black Lives Matter revere. Well, first of all, Black Lives Matter is patterned on the Black Panthers, which was a terrorist organization in the 60s and 70s. And in particular, Assata Shakur. Now, Assata Shakur, have you heard that thing, we have nothing to lose but our chains? You've heard that chant?
Yep.
Yeah, that's Assata Shakur. Assata Shakur murdered a New York police officer, I think it was early 1970s. And she was convicted. She was also involved in the Black Panther movement and the Weatherman Underground, and which are both terrorist organizations, black supremacist organizations, not equality organizations, black supremacist. And that matters because Black Lives Matter is patterned on that, and it's not an accident. And she was involved in a number of bombings as well. She was convicted. She escaped. She was housed in various places by sympathizers, and eventually escaped to Cuba, where she's still, hopefully rotting, as far as I'm concerned. I hope she's rotting.
That's where Tupac and Biggie are too, right?
Sorry, was that?
That's where Tupac and Biggie are too, chilling in Cuba.
Yeah, except Tupac's not alive.
He was related to her.
Yeah.
Lulu Shakur, Assata Shakur. Now, I don't know if Huey Newton would be considered a supremacist. I've heard him say some pretty equal things about race, but he's obviously just one person out of the whole group. I know the Black Liberation Army was very supremacist. They were
yeah.
Not sure about the Black Panthers, though.
Oh, they were, yeah, no. They were supremacists, yeah.
Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, I'm not too sure about. Are there comments anyway?
Yeah, no, we're just...
Are people actually seeing
People
it?
are listening right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
Elizabeth Braun says, social activist, oh, look, there's no wheelchair ramp into that building, so let's build a ramp. And the social justice warrior says, let's persecute people for having stairs, or for people using stairs and make them feel bad for having legs.
Yeah, a lot of this, exactly, a lot of this is not building people up, it's tearing people down.
Mm-hmm.
That's the wrong way to do it.
There's no unity in it. There's
Yeah.
We're better.
We should. Now that we're talking about Black Lives, which I intentionally didn't do a whole bunch of research because I wanted to actually be kind of fresh here. But we've got this issue in Alberta with CFI and the Gay Pride Parade.
Oh yeah.
So you and Aaron, I thought would be good to talk about that since he, runs Vancouver CFI, and he's not crazy like.
Not crazy like CFI Regina.
There you go.
Yeah.
So why? What's crazy? Like, tell people what you told me.
Well, okay. Now, what happened in Calgary was that there was a small group of First Nations gay LGBT people that requested of the Gay Pride Committee that Calgary Police Services not be in the Gay Pride Parade. And they acquiesced to this demand, or it wasn't demand, I guess they asked. I shouldn't characterize it like that. But and of course, the city was, the mayor was disappointed. Which was very supportive of the LGBT community. The Calgary Police Service is very supportive of the LGBT community. It by all measures, I have not heard a single voice about CPS that was bad. And I've heard a lot of bad things from the gay community about the Calgary Pride Committee, however.
That's funny.
Yeah, it doesn't do very well, apparently.
Why do they want them to take part in it? What was the reason?
Well, okay. Well, this is the thing. They said that they would not be comfortable with them participating, and I don't buy that personally. That may be true, but how do the myriads of police that are lining the parade route all of a sudden become invisible? It doesn't make sense to me. So I can only see it as a punitive action by a certain small group. That's a good question. I don't know.
Wasn't it just no uniforms allowed?
They couldn't. They could participate, but not as a group and not in uniform. And there, by the way, there was another function which was set up just for uniformed officers because a number of people within the gay community, which was, by the way, not consulted at all. They were not happy with Calgary Pride's decision.
Vancouver.
So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they interrupted Vancouver.
Okay, so instead of the LGBT community fighting with the police, they're fighting with the gay pride, which is like an extension of them.
No, they were.
No.
Oh,
well, is this because of Black Lives Matter?
No. Yes and no. It's kind of it's not like Toronto. Toronto was specifically Black Lives Matter. That was a terrible tactic. That's a despicable tactic, what Black Lives Matter in Toronto did. Here...
Oh, shut down the parade. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, they shut down the parade, basically held them hostage. And yet they caved in. This is the big problem. When you cave into these groups, they just go for more. They're not going to stop. And this is a tactic that's straight out of Black Lives Matter. They hijack other groups' functions.
The clothing.
You think you'd want the police's support, right?
Yeah, I think this harms relations between the CPS and the LGBT community of Calgary. Okay, so now that was done, and then CFI Calgary, we did a whole episode on this with the former head of CFI Calgary. She resigned because of the pressure. She lost a number of pounds, and if you know Helen Beach, she doesn't weigh much.
Oh, okay.
And so she stepped down, and right now there's no. It's up in the air as to whether there will be a CFI Calgary.
And you're not interested in doing it?
No, you got to be kidding me! No, thank you. No. I'm not that kind of person. I am not a political animal.
And Regina supports on the police.
Well, okay. So CFI Calgary decided they were going to pull back and say what's going on here, because we should be supporting law enforcement. The Calgary Police Service is one of the most supportive of minority groups in the world, bar none.
Oh, really?
It is well recognized, and they're talking to Somalians all the time, and they are actively making relationships with minority groups. So what is going on here? Well, okay, CFI Regina, they should have kept their mouths shut because they had no dog in this race. This was a local issue. CFI Canada, that's a separate issue entirely. They do have a say because that's the umbrella organization. But CFI Regina put out a message on their Facebook page and citing all this other extraneous stuff. And one of them, I didn't go much farther than the first one because, and this is really relevant to this podcast because this is a Skeptics podcast, and Skeptics should recognize logical fallacies. Okay, you'd think, especially head of CFI Regina, Dan Benesh. Okay, here's the thing that. Carding has been an issue in the news. Edmonton has been accused of racism because of the disproportionate amount of, stopping First Nations people and asking for their identification, etc.
Stop and frisk, yeah.
So this, therefore, racism, therefore systemic racism. Okay, that's a pretty big charge. But can you name the logical fallacy here? I'm
Regarding
asking. No, okay. Here's the form of the argument. The form of the argument is if there's racism, we should see a disproportionate number of First Nations or people of color stopped and ID'd on the street. We see people stopped on the street, and we see that disproportionate asking for ID. Therefore, racism.
Well, it's a correlation and causation mix-up.
Close.
Not sequitur because it doesn't follow.
Well, it affirming the consequent is the actual formal fallacy.
Yeah, what is it, modus tollens or ponens?
Hey, Swatsky.
Because ice cream sales go up.
Where's my money?
Ice cream sales go up, and so do drownings, and ice creams don't cause drownings.
Hey, Randy, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
I don't Kevin would have been one.
I don't think he can see you.
You can't see me? Oh.
He's lucky.
He can hear you.
All of our viewers can see you.
So, Aaron.
Hi, I'm Kevin from Northside Valley. I actually used to be a trophy husband, but not first place.
No.
Aaron, are you going to jump in here?
Well, you'll notice that I'm not big loud. I haven't made a statement about what.
Oh yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble.
Oh, we're already in trouble.
Yeah. I don't want to get CFI Vancouver in trouble.
Sounds like they're just getting bent out of shape for the sake of getting bent out of shape.
I'll just say, can't we all just get along?
So we don't know why they asked the cops to stay out of the parade.
Well, yeah, there was a press release, but it was in consultation with this group called Voices, and they actually talked to the police and said, okay, we don't just stay out of the parade this year. I certainly hope that Calgary Pride took a big hit on this because they're not representative of the LGBT community. They're a part of it, but they don't, there's no consultation with the LGBT community at large.
I'm so confused. Okay, so they wanted the cops out of the parade because they were stopping frisking too many.
Well, no, this was CFI Regina trying to rationalize why CFI Calgary shouldn't have withdrawn from Calgary Pride Parade. And they had no business entering into the discussion, really. And that message has disappeared off of the Facebook page, I think, and I think CFI Canada probably told them to take it off. I'm not privy to that. I'm privy to some things, but not CFI Regina.
Well, what can we do here other than encourage police relationships with Native American, all different racial minorities and LGBT and all that? I don't know how we're doing here. Do you know, Aaron? Are they trying to make them pull out as well?
We live in one of the better places in the world for that kind of thing.
Well, there's lots of different ethnicities out here, so...
Oh, yeah. Especially Vancouver, yeah.
We've also probably got a relatively diverse police force itself in Canada, compared to a lot of other countries anyways.
Especially Regina,
Speak
Saskatchewan.
up, lean in.
Oh, Regina has a terrible... the Regina police have a terrible reputation.
Yeah, First Nations are having troubles all over the country, not just in Calgary.
Yeah. But, women are, if you're a First Nations woman, you're 10 times more likely to be carded than any other group. But there's a good reason why that is, and there's a disproportionate number of First Nations women that are in the sex trade. And it's very unfortunate because Stats Canada refuses to collect any data in terms of a racial breakdown of crime. The United States does it, we don't. And excuse the pun, but that I think is criminal. We need it.
Well, I've heard that better-looking people like myself tend to do better in life, get paid more. Are they discriminating against ugly people, and should we do something about that?
Okay, we're getting into the realm of implicit bias. That isn't necessarily racism at all. It's just, like, for instance, in the United States, black people that are black men, not people, black men in particular, get 5 to 10% longer prison sentences than whites. Is that racism? Well, no. It's there's definitely a bias there, but you try and tell me that there are no black judges. You got to be kidding me. But that pales in comparison to women who, when you control for severity of the crime, criminal histories, etc., they get 63% lower sentences than men, and there's no difference in black or white there. So there are biases, and they can have a strong effect, but it's recognized, and it's just a bit of training. Systemic racism, if you're going to make that claim, you better have some strong evidence. I want to see either the laws, which say that people of color are treated differently under the law, or some edict from police brass up top to the rank and file police officers that are out on the beat to say, okay, you're going to stop and ID people of color more than whiteys like us.
Well, when we're
like
done
us.
here, I'll post a link that shows that they accounted for all the different criminal histories and all the variables, and the black people still got more time in jail. But they also did those computer tests where they showed like images of different people, and even the black people were
Yes, that's true.
Images. So
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of those tests. I think that we need better metrics. But it seems to me that you can practice and get better at just that, and then perform better. It doesn't mean that you're actually changed at all.
Well, you do it with all white people, and some are dressed nice, and some are dressed like trailer trash crackheads, and you're going to discriminate against the trailer trash crackhead look.
Absolutely. And you're also looking at behaviors. If behavior is suspicious, a police officer is going to stop you. This is part of what Black Lives Matter wants to stop, is broken windows policing, but broken windows policing is very effective. It has decreased crime in high crime neighborhoods significantly. It's been used in New York very successfully.
What is it?
It's called broken windows policing.
Which is what?
Part of it is the stopping people that are acting suspiciously and asking for identification.
Oh, okay.
It's things like that, and it works. It's actually part of sound. As long as they're not actually racially profiling. If you're racially profiling, yes, now you're treating people differently under the law. But there's no evidence that that's happening.
Is that like doing extra policing in neighborhoods that have a lot of broken windows, kind of thing?
Yeah, it kind of comes from that. Like small crimes. It's like selling cigarettes. That one man, I can't remember his name, who died after he resisted arrest in New York.
That guy.
Yeah, and that was really unfortunate. But bad things can happen if you resist arrest. I mean, it's what happened in Ferguson. The guy that I can't remember if he actually did steal those cigarettes or not, but police officer stopped him because he was walking down the middle of a street, which, by the way, is a violation of the law. And a fight ensued, and the man that was shot was trying to get the police officer's gun, and the forensic evidence showed that was the case. And then also, but in the meantime, because they couldn't get an indictment, obviously, because all the evidence was clearly in the police officer's favor, and his account was correct. The outcome of that indictment attempt resulted in the Ferguson riots. And then you have all these people, not Ferguson, I think it was Milwaukee, where the black mobs were pulling white drivers out of their car and beating them because, driving while white, right? And I actually asked this. This is where social justice goes screwy. I asked someone, "Well, is that racism?" And this woman said, "No, that's just violent prejudice."
Same thing. I mean, race.
What do you say to that? What do you say to that?
I'm wondering things if they were enslaved for like 400 years, and then all the stuff with the civil rights and stuff, how long does it take them to recuperate? You know what I mean? It probably takes a while. I mean, they were driven into poverty, and now they're starting to kind of come out of it.
Well, actually, just after the Civil War, the number of black people in the workforce was, percentage-wise, was higher than it is now. So, I don't know. I don't know if you can blame slavery. I don't think you can do that.
Paid as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course.
There's so many factors that to pin it on one thing is impossible.
We just need to be really careful not to paint everything with one brush. Don't speak in super broad terms, and you will be
like identity politics. Yeah,
and
don't do it.
Nail down your definitions.
And also to
Always nail down definitions.
Tyler's comment, how long does it take them to recuperate? I think by making that comment, you're kind of assuming that they had equal access to absolutely everything as well, which I don't think was really the case.
Yeah, no. As soon as the whole
This is a chicken and
civil
egg.
rights got passed, I mean, it's probably going to take a while. A lot of it is poverty and crime related. Crime is directly linked to poverty, my understanding. But
They are definitely linked. There's more than just a correlation.
Well, Black Lives Matter wants to have police remove their body cams.
Yeah.
no, that's stupid. They should want more of them.
Yeah.
You heard me correctly. They do not want body cams on police.
Because they don't want to be recorded.
Why is that?
That's interesting. I
didn't know that.
I did not know that.
We'll have to
Yeah.
check out for that.
Yeah, if you go over to it's a website called the Movement for Black Lives, and there's a whole manifesto. A lot of it is so Marxist. It's
Caller who's waiting.
it's terrible. They want to take over all policing, and I'm just like, yeah, right. Because you could do such a better job.
I was going to suggest body cams, and then you said that right away.
We have a comment from Brad who says, history of unfairness to black people in this country, that being the United States, we're up in Canada, is well documented.
Well, can you get Brad on to ask him
Yeah,
a
Brad's
question?
actually going to be coming on a caller. Yeah,
Can you ask Randy? I think he wants to ask Randy a question.
he does want
I
to.
thought you wanted
Actually,
to call
Randy,
in.
you want to take a call?
If it works.
Yeah, it's going through your phone, so we're hoping. You still there, Randy?
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to have a caller. One of our callers wants to.
We'll try.
We'll try anyways. Yeah, because we've been having technical issues.
$20 says it doesn't work.
Okay,
50
I'll take
says
that
it-
bet,
50
and I
says it
will
doesn't
up
work.
it by 50.
Yeah.
Not a gambling.
Okay, Lucy, you can go ahead whenever you're ready there. If you can add Brad into a call. And
I do believe Brad is.
Brad Longmire?
Yeah, I think that he's black.
Are you?
Can I say black? Or am I getting in trouble?
No.
He's a friend of mine, so.
Yeah. I'll beat him up for you if you like, Brad. I'm closer anyway.
So Tyler can actually use that line. Hey, I do have black friends.
Oh,
Oh,
that's a good person. Oh.
Except I didn't know they were black, so.
I guess to Tyler, everybody's black.
Yeah, Tyler's the least.
Now everybody's kind of fucking blurry a little bit.
Systemic, I think you mean? Oh, systemic racism. Yeah, I agree. It's so deep in the U.S. culture, I have no vision for. And Brad says, no, I'm saying racist responses from black mob in frustration from that treatment.
that doesn't excuse it.
Yeah.
Well, I used to think kind of the same thing. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X tried to do it, and Gandhi, and they all got shot, so peaceful doesn't work. But it does, because when they're violent, then you look.
If you listen to social justice warriors, and I'm using the pejorative here, the March to Selma hasn't happened yet, and
Systemic racism, yeah, I agree. It's so deep.
Oh, that's our audio.
that's you guys, not me.
Oh, that.
Gotta kill that.
Where's that playing through?
Sounds like it's coming through the speakers.
Yeah, it's coming through the speakers. But it just
There's something on the
Is it my phone?
might be.
I don't know.
Someone's making a very
I certainly agree that systemic racism has been a problem in the past. There really were laws in both the United States and Canada. The Jim Crow laws in the U.S. and the dry bones law. I don't know if that's what it's called, but there was a case in Canada where a First Nations person was arrested for public drunkenness, and it was a law that was specific to First Nations, which of course violates. At the time, it wasn't the Constitution, but it was the Bill of Rights. And so these laws have existed in the past. They're gone. And I agree that it takes time for things to quieten down after that. But to think that history hasn't changed is, I think, it is. We have progressed. I mean, there's a ways to go, but we have progressed, and it's moving in the right direction, I think. But now Black Lives Matter has come out and basically paints a picture that it's been open season on black people, and that's not true.
Is it fair to say, Randy, that every movement for social better social conditions has always had a peaceful side and a violent side?
Well, you're talking about something like the Overton window, right?
Mm.
And I think the Overton window works remarkably well, except for every time it hasn't, which is every time. I think it delays change. I really don't think that it, because I can only talk about my own personal feeling about it, because every time I see an act of violence, I am not moved to go in that direction. I abhor it. It doesn't matter who's doing it. If it's, the KKK's been pretty darn violent, and I don't see that moving public opinion in their direction. Whoa!
Kevin.
Oh, it was picking
that.
it up on.
Wow,
Sorry.
We figured it out.
fucking demons, I tell you. Well, Martin Luther King did it the peaceful way, and I know he got shot, but I don't. What works? Boycotting? What? 'Cause that's
What
he
works? Wow.
did. What works to accomplish these goals that the good goals that Black Lives Matter has listed, like boycotting?
Well, yeah, real change has to come from, it's from serious people, right? And it's such a, especially in the U.S., it's not as big a problem in Canada, but in the U.S., the politicians are complete morons.
We know this. Trump.
Yeah, but
You know how Trump came to be? It was a perfect storm. You had part of it was the regressive left, and it had a very significant factor. Even though I'm sure they voted for Hillary, I voted for Hillary.
So did I.
Yeah, it was the best of a bad bunch. I mean, seriously, you've got Donald Trump and Hillary. Those are the two front runners. I'm never going to vote for an idiot like Donald Trump. He's a bombastic moron. And a compulsive liar, and I don't trust him to sit right way on a toilet seat. Let's put it that way. And Hillary ran too safe a campaign. She was uninspiring in the extreme. I mean, if Bernie Sanders were there, yeah, there's an argument to be made that he would have won. I'm not sure, because there's an Achilles heel for Bernie Sanders, and that's he's a social democrat, and that word social doesn't sit well with a lot of people in the U.S. And in Canada, we don't give a damn, because a lot of our infrastructure is based in socialism, sort of. But you had a very lackluster campaign by Hillary. You had people that were disenfranchised and pushed down. And when somebody came along in the name of Donald Trump and started talking about certain topics that nobody else was talking about, it doesn't matter how ridiculous his speech was. People are going to latch onto that, because someone's finally talking about something that's important to them, and they don't care who it is. And it just happened to be Donald.
Hillary was eating children in the basement of a pizza parlor.
Oh my God! Seriously, I can't believe people believe that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. People don't have these.
Yeah, the populace is not as informed as it could be. Yes, that's a nice way to put it.
That was a bit of a detour.
Total detour.
But her emails.
Oh, I couldn't care less
But
about her emails.
That's what causes all this, is people don't have good critical thinking skills.
I don't really care about the emails either, but it is funny to note that Jared Kushner recently got busted doing official White House business on a personal email account.
Yes.
Exactly. And Trump just tweets all of his damn orders.
Okay, here we go. I think we got Brad finally.
Hi, Brad.
Brad, can you hear us?
Finally in here. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Finally.
You're coming through really well.
There we go. Okay. Hi, Brad. Sorry about that. Sorry for everybody watching, too.
No, kill myself.
All right, cool.
Okay, ask away.
Ask away, Brad.
Who am I? Who am I asking?
Dr. Randy Tyson. The guest we've got.
Just remember, my PhD is in chemistry.
We have no chemistry.
Yeah.
I have 12 feet. I'll answer any question you want.
Okay, question. So, everything about it not being open season on black people in this country, can you explain exactly why it seems to be that any time there's a white nationalist issue or white people are up in arms about anything like that, there seems to be less of an issue for them to gather in masses of hundreds and thousands and cause violence. Yet, I'm hearing so much about Black Lives Matter and what they're doing and how they're tackling incorrectly, but I'm not getting any answers from anyone about how we can tackle any of this correctly. It seems like whatever issue we have is not the right way to go. You can't kneel during the Super Bowl without, I don't know, hating the country. You can't complain about cops without, I don't know, hating cops. When is it going to be okay for us to say that we don't like the way we're being treated, and when do we get listened to? Because I'm hearing a bunch of white people, no offense, telling us about our problems, even though they have no first, eye view. Like, I've been discriminated by cops personally, so I know that they fuck with me. So how is that supposed to, how are we supposed to sit here and stay calm when we're being told there's no proof, there's no proof, there's no proof?
Randy,
there's no proof because our own personal issues, what we go through, no one listens to, no one seems to care. So how are we supposed to get y'all to listen when it's always going back to statistics? It's always going back to what can be proven.
Brad, keep in mind, everybody here in this car anyways in Canada, so we probably, you're right, we don't actually experience it firsthand like what you go through. We're gonna give Randy a chance to respond quickly, and then we'll talk to you a little bit more, okay? So stay on the line. You're still here. We're just gonna give Randy a chance to respond. Go ahead, Randy.
Sure. I can't speak to your personal experiences. This is one of the reasons why personal experiences are very tough to verify. They're tough to, for me to, we get one side of the issue, and you should be talking about it. Okay. I'm not saying for one moment that you shouldn't talk about it. But at the same time, what did the police, what were they doing? Any individual situation I can't speak to. And that's why we ask for stats, because then we get an idea of what a more general, objective view of things is. When we try to make social policy, we need to remove our emotions. And one of the ways to do that is to actually study a problem from an objective standpoint. That doesn't invalidate your experience. It's just that it's tough to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's tough to make a generality out of individual incidents. And so policy needs to be made from an objective standpoint. But your frustration is seen. We get, I don't know about the news services in the U.S., but we see quite a bit of this.
Here's my problem with the stats thing when it comes to dealing with people is who's collecting the stats. If the people who are getting the stats are biased, then you can't trust the stats. That's the problem. If the people who are in power get to represent and report their own shit, then how do you know that those stats can be trusted? If you go, are you abusing these people over here? And then you go ask them and they go, no, here are our stats. How are you supposed to know those stats are trusted?
That's why you don't stay to one source.
Well, even if they are
Yeah,
reliable,
you don't go with one source
But
only.
this is true though, because the people collecting these statistics tend to be the cops, right?
but even if they are reliable,
Or the authorities.
I always thought that they drove black people into poverty, so crime went up, and then they just assumed that black people were more likely to commit crime because black people were more likely to live in poverty because they put them there.
That's the chicken and the egg thing.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a level of disingenuity to the whole thing. So people are frustrated because we can't prove anything playing by the rules to the people who are holding us down. It's impossible. It's an
I don't
impossible
agree.
thing.
I don't agree with that at all.
No, I don't
No.
think it's impossible to prove it, Brad. Yeah, and I don't think Randy doesn't obviously either.
No.
I think if you carefully design studies, if you feel that you can find people that aren't biased to do these, it would have more credit than these so-called.
There are lots of people at universities that do the stats collecting too, and so it's not just from a single source.
But it could be from crime, though, right? Like poverty, I mean, could be causing this. It's not like a racial thing. It's just you happen to be
Yes.
one that
Yeah.
were driven to,
Sure.
like that guns, germs, and steel. Why did the white people?
I'm making absolutely no claims to cause.
Yeah.
Well, here's the issue with crime statistics. If you make certain crimes legal on one side and certain crimes illegal on the other side, then you can't report those crimes from people who aren't being categorized as crimes. So therefore, if you're the king
Could you give me an
and
example?
you make laws,
Yeah.
here's an example. If you're the king and you make laws and then you don't follow those laws, but you're the one who says he's breaking them, then every time you commit a crime, you're protected. But every time someone else commits a crime who's on the other side, they're not. So now it looks like you're committing all the crimes and you look squeaky clean.
Well, it's an
Right.
interesting
Which is what
hypothesis, but
is
you
going
need
on
your
with that.
evidence to go with that hypothesis.
Yeah. Do you have an idea, or do you have an example of a double standard crime kind of thing where it's legal for
A
one?
double standard crime, yeah, all of American history. If we're going to sit here and talk about stats, then why should I assume that suddenly, in this time and age, that white people suddenly have gotten nice when it comes to black people? What proof is there? Because we've got history documented that there's been unfairness up to this point. So let's just take a look back to how the past worked. When slavery was banned, they just upped ways that they could fuck with black people after that. They weren't called slaves. I mean, you can go, I don't have the stats here, but you can go find it in history books. It's been documented. The CDC, they did the whole, what do you call it? The test on black people to see what would happen with syphilis. At the time they were doing that, they was operating.
Yeah,
within
that is
the law.
terrible. There's also the Tuskegee experiment. That was horrible.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So So what proof is that? I mean, I know you're like, oh, you can't prove it, but once again, it goes right back to if these people, even Trump. I mean, can we be honest for a minute here? Does anyone think a black president would be able to act like Trump and be president the way that he is conducting himself?
I
Act like
can't
that.
believe Trump.
I can't believe he's white, and I don't believe he can do it. I mean, he's wow. Yeah, he's out in space.
Are the sources that
I just mean the way that he acts, the way that he talks, the way that he speaks to people, just his whole demeanor. When Barack Obama was president, he had I don't believe he would have gotten to the place that he was in this country if he conducted himself the way that Trump did. I don't believe that a woman would have gotten to that place conducting themselves in that manner. Stuff like little things like that, where not just from a social level, but it seems to me like it goes right back to the disingenuous. Like, I understand the stats, but it's not just the stats; it's how you read them.
Brad.
Just like what's his name was saying.
Brad,
Who said that about?
It's not just if you say it's just about how you read the stats, that will lead you to further hypotheses that you can test, and quite often the stats are already available for that. But
Bill Clinton couldn't get a blowjob, and Trump can talk about wanting to fuck his daughter. And both
I don't understand. Someone's going to have to explain to me how Trump is still in power. I really don't know.
Okay, I've
Trump's
seen
in power for the same things that this nation keeps saying doesn't exist because of explicit racism and bias. in
No,
this
that's a
country.
claim. No, that's a claim. You
claim I'm
need to
making.
actually provide that it's.
If you want proof, go online to Trump's All you gotta do is go on his page and see what people comment. That's one thing. See how many racist comments you can find. Just see how many likes you can get from racist comments. Start adding those numbers up.
Brad, it's time. You're too close
to your microphone. So, move away.
Back up.
Try talking again. Go ahead.
I've seen the studies he's talking about, so maybe I'm wrong.
Are you still there, Brad?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
there
yeah,
we
just
go.
move a little way from your microphone because you're coming through all distorted.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Verizon.
Okay.
Verizon.
I gotta hold this to my mouth then.
Yeah. Try to take it a little bit further than that.
Brad.
Hold on one second. Let me switch it.
You have another call?
No. He's just he couldn't hear us because he was too close to the mic.
Yeah, it's clipping.
I think he's talking about the studies that showed white people and black people similar backgrounds. The black guy got a hell of a lot more time. I've seen those. I can post them.
Oh yeah, the crime and punishment. Yeah.
Well, that's 5 to 10%. Yeah, there's definitely implicit bias. I don't think you can go to racism.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, much better.
Yeah, if you guys can hold
on a second.
We have a
That's
question.
one point I want to make here.
Fucking mute button.
That's important. As much as I'm sympathizing with Brad, and I believe in his experience, of course, as well. You also have to remember that right here, if to try to solve the problem, we must move forward in order to solve the problem, not to go any path of vengeance either for what has happened in the past.
That's
Yeah. Eye for an eye means that the whole world goes blind. Right?
Okay, my issue with that is that's only being told to people who are constantly being messed with. No one's telling.
I'm not saying forget about it, Brad. I'm not saying forget about it. But I'm saying, you got to make sure that your intentions are leave the past there. Don't forget about it, because if you forget about it,
you can't. Yeah.
Well, this isn't a vengeance past thing. This is the past is still happening now, and no one's listening. No black person is saying that everything's okay now. When people say that race relations,
well, actually, I would disagree with that.
More progressive. We're not saying that. So there is no
Thomas Sowell would tell you differently.
Who?
Thomas Sowell.
Who the hell is that?
Oh, you need to read Thomas Sowell. Okay. Yeah, he would definitely disagree with you. He's a Harvard professor in political history, and yeah, he's very anti-affirmative action. It's been a problem, and as it's been implemented, I agree it is a problem.
Also,
I'm anti-affirmative action as well.
No, I just wanted to acknowledge the frustration I can hear in Brad's voice, and I completely sympathize with that too.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm listening. It's.
Well, we got 4 white guys here in Canada.
Yeah, I know. This is why on my podcast I'm very happy to have 2 women with me, because sometimes it crosses over into feminist issues, and I feel very self-conscious about being a white heterosexual male.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's poverty, I think, because I see the same thing with poor white people. They're more likely to be criminals and whatnot. So let's do something about poverty, and that'll help everybody.
Right.
Yes, like university and free job training, and
there lies your answer,
and all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. We have programs in Canada for First Nations people to access higher education for free, and that's a positive thing.
Let's go take statistics in trailer parks and see if we get the same result with black people. I mean, it might not be black. It might just be.
Oh, they're not. Well, where are you talking about? They're not black here.
No, I know. Not here.
They're. It's all white literally trailer trash.
Well, Tyler's blind, so everybody's black to him, right?
No, they're blurry.
The difference between poverty and being black is being able to take off that thing that makes you get mistreated. If
you're right.
Poor, you can put on a nice suit. If you're black, you would have to paint your skin, flatten your nose, and dye your hair. It's different.
Yeah,
if you're a black man and you're standing and you look like you fit a description, someone can tackle you or shoot you and get away with it by just saying, I thought he was someone else. Yeah. That is specifically a black issue.
But that needs to be addressed where it is, not like everywhere else.
I want to see that study where they have people be more afraid of the white guy dressed like a wigger and the black guy dressed like wearing suits and all that.
The problem is I don't think they've done studies for that.
Well, the problem is the fact that you have to wear a suit before anyone's afraid of you. Like, why can't I wear my hoodie without being shot? Like,
have you been shot wearing a hoodie?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
They're scared of the news.
But I'm saying, people have been. I'm just saying, like, I don't care if the white person is dressed up thuggy and the black guy's dressed up nice. That's kind of pointless. I mean, I get that, but the point is, until we can wear whatever we want and get treated like anyone else is wearing the same thing, because if you're going to do that, then you need to have the white guy and the black guy dressed the same. Either they're both in suits or they're both dressed like wiggers. Otherwise, it's not a fair comparison.
I got an idea. Let's create a TV show like Cops, but they only arrest white people on the footage.
I love it.
Just white people.
Just white people.
No other ethnicity, because that's what
Bad
happens.
boys.
People watch stuff like that, and they watch the news, and they see black, 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 and then they're afraid of it, even though they don't realize that statistically.
Yeah, the media has a big role to play.
Yeah.
Now, I agree with that.
Hey, stop
Huge.
watching. Everybody should stop watching TV.
Crime goes down, but crime
Watching
coverage
TV.
goes up.
No, that's a good point. I agree with the media, and I feel like they instigate it, you know.
Yeah,
So I'm not.
Yeah, they
but my
sensationalize.
anger here is not just Black Lives Matter. I don't even care. My anger is with the disingenuousness of the whole thing. Now, them themselves, I don't consider myself a part of what that is. I feel like that was just something that was pushed as soon as it became newsworthy. My issues with the way black people are mistreated in this country has gone much further than that. I don't care what's on CNN or what's hot at the moment. You know, my issue is specifically with these putting the fingers in both ears and not listening to citizens. You know, at least, it might be hard to prove, but at least when we speak on our personal experiences, it should be taken with some kind of seriousness like anyone else who was speaking on it. It should count as something. If you go to court, you have eyewitness accounts. But for some reason, unless we can prove everything, it's like it's just falling on deaf ears.
Eyewitness accounts are notoriously like.
Yeah, that's the weakest form of evidence, unfortunately.
But they've been used to throw a lot of people in jail.
Yeah, and I agree. And a lot of people are. Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson has been on up for jury duty 3 times, and every time he has been removed from the jury because he says he cannot convict on the basis of eyewitness testimony alone. And I agree with him.
He's kind of useless to them.
Yeah, I don't.
So, you know, if we got about maybe 6 million more of you guys and 6 million less of like Trump fans, maybe I wouldn't be so angry.
Right on, Brad.
Trump.
What about 60 million?
What about
60 million might not be enough.
What about teaching the evolution of skin color in elementary schools? That was one of my ideas.
Brad, can I
That's
ask
a
you
good
something?
idea, actually.
Can I ask you something about Trump? Now, it seems to me that I don't know if you'll agree with this, that the racism that is obvious in a lot of the Trump supporters came out, but it was always there as an undercurrent, right? It was quiet. It was quiet, and I'm not sure why it was quiet.
Well,
the
word of the day, disingenuous. It goes right back to one of the first things that happened that black people were told as soon as Barack Obama won the presidency is you have a black president, so you don't have any problems.
Yeah, I know. That's bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were hit with that immediately. It's like, hey, you won. You've got a black president. Like we had 50 of them.
Yeah.
Know? And so, but really all that did was show how racist it was, that just having one guy that was half black was that big of a deal, that it was that much of a conversation.
Exactly. Yes, and that's the same for a lot of issues. You know, like we should just watching Star Trek the other night, and it's like, the first openly lesbian character, and I'm just like, why is that so important? Because we're supposed to be striving for that to be completely unimportant. You know what I mean?
You know, like who here agrees? Like, well, it's not even a matter of agreeing or not, but everyone here understands that, like, genetically, we are all one race. There's no such thing as race. There's nothing like separating us into different groups.
It's not quite true, but yeah, I understand you.
There's more diversity between black people in Africa.
Well, you mean we're all the same species? I mean, we're able to interbreed.
No, you can't.
No, it's not a species. It's a race. We are one race.
Yeah, well, I know. I'm saying, yeah, the human race. By race, I mean species. The word race is just made up.
Brad, I think you just have too many stupid people in America, and you need a better education system.
And there go all your American listeners. You know.
Hey, I want to come to Canada, okay? Canada said that we can't all flood there.
You know what? We are from Canada in not retrospect, but we're in the cheap seats. I completely admit that.
Nosebleeds, actually.
Yeah, nosebleeds. Yeah, we're actually. There's a lot of things that there's some things that America gets better than us, but culturally, I don't know.
Harry, we have a question from the back seat. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for what it's worth, I did live in the U.S. for several years. I'm actually a veteran of the U.S. military.
Fought in the Iraq War.
Yep.
There's a man.
Killed people.
That's why we put him in
With
his
his
bag
bare
with me,
hands.
because I'm the only one who can handle this guy.
So I don't think that's the issue. I think it's poverty and education. You guys just got too much poverty and a
Yeah,
terrible
and
education system.
Mike Mundell here has made a good point that he gets privilege for being tall. He gets picked first. He was always looked to for leadership, that sort of stuff. So
Remind me to delete him off my friends list. Just kind of balance things out.
Tall privilege.
They
Hold on
just
a
don't
second.
seem to be the loudest.
everybody's still there. Everybody was coming.
Yeah, I'm still here.
But yeah, you know that's one thing to talk about the military. The military is quite overrepresented by black people because you know the recruitment is specific to go into poor neighborhoods.
Sorry, guys. Just pause for a second here. We're just losing our feed.
That's a matter of
Oh, there we go. We're back on. Okay, sorry about that.
I didn't think we'd left, but
Go,
Sorry, but you're going to have a hard time recruiting in Beverly Hills.
go recruit in Portland.
yeah, well, of course you are.
Like,
Well, actually, Beverly Hills isn't quite the place as what it used to be, but yeah, I get the picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jason,
Well, I mean, you are definitely correct about education and poverty.
Yeah.
The other bane in my existence will always be religion, which
Goes without saying.
Hey,
you know,
Brad, I want
and that.
very much, Brad. Sorry.
Well,
Yeah,
we got another call,
finish
Brad.
your
Oh,
thought.
can I ask Brad something?
We're just gonna finish that.
Brad,
Go ahead.
Can I? Actually, I'd like to invite you on our podcast because I know that religion is very deeply ingrained in the black community.
Yes.
And
Not him.
how is it to be an atheist in that
Oh,
cultural?
it's awful, man. It's awful. Like I'm a black sheep in my own family, which is ironic because I'm already black, so it's double. And it's I say all the time that I'm a super minority, but it just baffles me. Unfortunately, what religion became for us was a way to survive slavery and
Yes.
a lot of things, and looked at it as something that our family gave us when they had nothing else to give us. So black people have a very emotional tether to it. They don't care at all about the logic behind it. It's an emotional thing.
Religion correlates with poverty around the world.
Or
It really does.
religiosity, yeah, absolutely. I mean, well,
So,
you guys talked to my wife a while back. Kevin, you did.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, she was in Ghana, and it makes America look like Iceland.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Really?
Yeah.
it's
Burning.
But I'm gonna go, guys, and let the next caller get
Brad.
up.
Yeah, Brad, could you send me contact information? I'd like to get you on and talk about
Yeah,
that because that's a big issue. I've been wanting to hear some stories about different places and different people leaving religion behind.
I'll set you up. He's a friend of mine.
Thank you.
Yeah, he'll set it up.
Yeah,
Good talking to y'all.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Thank you.
Yeah, if both of you will leave a comment on our thread and maybe while you're there, share and subscribe and do all that stuff to make sure that you get our video and stuff, and that'd be great.
Are you taking Mike on?
Yeah, we're going to take Mike Mundell.
We're going to let you go, Brad.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much for calling,
later.
Brad. It's been awesome, man. Thank you. And thank you again. Okay, one sec here.
Just jumped in here with 5 white dudes.
Yeah, hold on a sec. I got to get rid of one caller here. So Brad has to hang up. And we're trying to reconnect, so we're having some problems here with connection. It shouldn't be. Oh, there we go. We're back on again. Okay. Whew. Okay, Brad's off. Go ahead, Lucy. You can add our next caller, which would be Mike Mundell. We're going to
have to sell drugs so we can buy new equipment.
Probably, or we have to sell the drugs that we already bought, right? Just kidding.
You gotta stop snipping it first.
Oh, man. Taking all the fun out of
I think
everything.
we can put Francis on the corner.
On the what?
On the corner. Vancouver's not very far.
Kevin, we could get a lot of money for you.
Look at his arms.
Look at those arms, man. Why don't we flex for our viewers there, Kev?
Flags have given my leather jacket.
He's got his leather jacket on. He's so modest. Okay, we're getting a new caller here. Oh, Brad's off. Lucy Morgan dropped. Oh. So I'm looking for Mike Mundell.
You can just go into ad.
I'm just going to go into ad here. The call's in progress, though. People can join the group later. Where's the ad?
You stole my phone, so
Here's your phone.
Fix the problem.
Anyway, so yeah, go ahead, Randy. If you got some thoughts or anything with Brad there, who was a great caller, by the way.
No, I was. Yeah. I thank Brad. I'm looking forward to talking to him too, because I think that's a fascinating subject. It's something that.
Randy, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
I know you're not a fan of Black Lives Matter, but
Nope.
Would it be possible to acknowledge that maybe, although the origins of Black Lives Matter, you said were nefarious to say the least?
Where's my opener?
Is that okay to think that maybe in an organization that didn't have such a great beginning could still be useful and be beneficial?
There are those type of organizations. They exist.
They're not mob mentality. That's the problem.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, they don't get the media play because they're not sensationalist like Black Lives Matter is.
Again, stop watching TV, everybody.
So do we have a
stop watching TV.
Do we have a non-crazy version? Because I remember they had White Tigers, which was supposed to be for everybody. The Black Panthers was just supposed to be for black.
Oh, you want to adjust your? You're not plugged in, buddy.
Me?
You're dying. Hold on, give me your thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
baby.
Okay, keep talking.
Do they have an alternative to BLM? Is my question.
Yes, there are alternatives.
You got some names of some?
I just can't name them offhand, but they do exist.
Well, we'll have to look into them out here too, because that's pretty important. Racism is stupid. If you understand evolution, racism is so dumb.
Racism is a theory about how the world works, just like flat earthers. It's very poorly informed, and when you talk about reality,
exactly.
you cause a lot of harm.
I don't pretend to understand racism at all. I don't.
Well, 20,000 years ago, you don't look like me, so you must be.
Well, that's true. That's. Yeah. Okay. We're a thinking species and we can rise above that. And it is a tribalistic thing, and it's a reasonably easy thing to go to, right? This guy's the same color skin as I am. He's part of my tribe. Why can't we rise above that? I don't know.
Phone is charging.
Well, the fact that we have this information about being one race is relatively scheme of things, right? Time-wise, the fact that we have this information via science is very, very recent. Although it might have been like 50 years, but I mean, in the history of humanity, it's extremely recent.
Well, strictly speaking, you can divide the human species up any way you want, because there's lots of ways to divide us that have nothing to do with skin color. Certain ethnic groups have different responses to medications or to disease.
Like people of Mediterranean descent.
Yes.
They're the only ones who get thalassemia.
Yeah.
That sort of idea.
Sickle cell anemia is another one, right?
Well, for doctors, not necessarily for people, right?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It is possible to divide people up, and it is sometimes even useful medically, right?
Yeah, you can subdivide and divide after that and keep going if you wanted.
But it's not gonna color your opinion of somebody, right?
Exactly, not us anyway.
And none of those things are immediately obvious upon meeting someone.
You look like you've got
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm scared of white crackheads.
Yeah, I'm scared of white crackheads.
Doesn't matter what color you are. If you're a crackhead, I'm scared of you. And if you're, he's right. You shouldn't have to wear a suit, but you shouldn't also look like you're going to do something illegal or harm you or whatever.
Well, that's a perception in the eye of the beholder.
Well, yeah, but that perception was put on there by 20 years of conditioning on Fox News.
Yeah, Fox.
So that's the problem. If you didn't have that kind of media is a huge player in this.
Blood cops.
I mean, you just listen to the news here in Canada and the U.S. You can see the huge difference. The news in the U.S. is like, here's a way you can change your tire on the your spare tire on the side of the road without getting raped. News at 6. You don't see this here in Canada.
It's not as bad.
The sensationalism is huge in the States.
I like the BBC for the record.
Yes.
PBS,
BBC or CBC, CTV are way better than CNN.
Oh God.
Oh, BBC. even.
Yeah.
But CBC is great as well.
I like
don't get me wrong.
CBC, yeah, 'cause it's publicly funded, so they're not, slanted to one side.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me about CTV is they always have World Vision on.
I don't know about CTV.
Little Haji here is starving.
Yeah, well, it's that. Not only that, but when they, the Mexican earthquakes, they're talking to World Vision. They're not talking to a secular organization like the Red Cross or Médecins Sans Frontières. It's just it's World Vision, and I just roll my eyes every time. And it's almost a daily occurrence with them.
I gotta say, thank the God I don't believe in.
Yeah.
Fox News North, like we almost did with Ezra Levant. Thank goodness.
Oh God, Ezra Levant. Oh.
Or the other guy. What's the guy's name that was running?
Oh,
we made fun of him a lot.
The guy from
Kevin O'Leary.
Kevin O'Leary.
Yeah. Kevin
Oh
O'Leary.
yeah.
It sounds like the solution is Bernie Sanders.
Why did Kevin O'Leary even run? Like he quit almost as soon as it was just bizarre.
They were blackmailing him. They had a whole bunch of dirt on him, and
They must have or something. Well, how hard could it have been to have dirt on Kevin O'Leary? Come on.
They were white mailing him. Not blackmailing.
You know what? My personal opinion is it's only worth that much. Kevin O'Leary saw that Trump could win.
Mike, are you there?
Almost tried to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We finally got Mike Mundell on.
Hey,
Yes.
welcome, Mike.
Hi, Mike. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks. Hey, I'm just trying to figure the technology here out. I'm
Definitely a
using Chrome.
Canadian. I heard the
Yeah.
A.
Drunk guys in the car can't figure out technology. Wonder why.
Can you guys hear me okay? Is the volume okay?
It's perfect.
All right, beautiful.
Awesome, man.
I bought a Kraken headset mic thing, and it's this is the first time I kind of really used it.
Did you just
Oh,
say
that's
you
very
bought
good.
Oh, good.
With a K.
Yeah.
What's your question, Mike?
Yeah, Mike. Go ahead.
I don't know what was the last thing. Oh yeah, okay. I guess I just wanted to. The only thing I can really expand upon is the tall privilege, like being tall.
Yeah.
I got to rule the world, man.
Tall people.
How tall are you?
Well,
6'7".
well, the thing is, if you were in Vietnam, the Vietnam War, you would be the last person to go into the tunnels. They always picked short people to go into the tunnels.
That's correct. I can't actually fly fighter planes either because I'm too tall for them.
Damn.
Damn.
I bet you if they had sobs, you could probably do it.
Can you imagine if he was blind? He'd hit every doorway because they're like 6'7".
Not to mention if
Oh man, that would hurt.
At 6'7", you could just disguise yourself as a tree and nobody would.
Now we got 6 white guys from Canada.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Can I go back to that original topic, I guess, and
Which
just
one's
mention
that?
something to Brad?
He's from Toronto.
Oh
I think.
yeah.
Is Brad still on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, hopefully he's still listening. Anyway, I just wanted to say that I when I was talking earlier, all my comments earlier, which I can't even find right now on where it is, but those were directed at the other caller when he had said something about it's not. I heard him say it's not open season on black people in the United States, and I just wanted to. Oh, that was okay. That was you?
Yeah. Okay,
cool. I just completely disagree with that from the perspective of my hobby being studying use of force videos and self-defense videos and all sorts of police type videos, even non-shooting videos. And the majority of them show that the police themselves are not trained.
Oh, I agree with that. Yep.
Well, yeah.
It's a training issue. There's a big problem in the United States that.
Okay, let me finish.
First, can I just mention something?
Can I finish?
I just want to mention that there's also a big problem in de-escalation. There's no de-escalation.
I agree 100%.
Randy's 6 foot. You have to listen.
Oh yeah, privilege. Oh god damn it.
No, so I watch a lot of these videos and I see how often, and I've seen black officers do it as well because I'm watching them all, but the vast majority of them are white officers shooting black men. Like some of them are judgment calls that I can get from one camera perspective. You don't even see it, and then you see a different camera perspective, and bam, there it is. But my point is just that the majority happens to black men, or often, or disabled people actually, and or the mentally ill, and it's just that's my perspective. That's what I see.
I'm disabled and mentally ill.
Yeah.
Are those the same YouTube videos that convince you 9/11 was an inside job demolition? Just asking.
Are we good? No, we're not going there right now, buddy.
I always make fun of. Okay, Randy can answer your question.
Go ahead, Randy.
Well, if you're intonating that it's more the majority of shootings involve a white police officer, that's not true. Actually,
Majority or white people are the majority, whatever, down in the States. So obviously, there's going to be a majority of white people.
I don't know.
No.
Listen, I'm
the
only
majority
one
of
who's
shootings. A black person is more likely to be shot by a black officer than a white officer.
Interesting.
That's not what it shows on the videos. Like I said, I've seen both.
That may be on the videos, but that's what the government Department of Justice. I hate this word. Statistics. It's who came up with that damn word? I can't say it. But yeah, that's from
Statistician. Yes.
Department of Justice stats. There, that's easier to say stats.
Excellent.
Well, it's good for me to know that because now knowing if that's a stat, then I can just use that in my own sort of my own hobby.
So what you've had is a selection bias, and
yeah, absolutely. No, I'm one person. We just slam Brad for the same thing, right? Like it's one person's experience, so that we can't take it all, right?
Anecdotal evidence. Google that shit.
This is a skeptics show after all, right?
Exactly.
Also,
The problem. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go for it, Mike.
No, I'm just gonna smoke a pipe actually right now.
Of?
There's a point that we
Well, hold on. Kevin's talking.
there's a point that we made that needs to be expanded upon is the lack of training for police officers.
Huge problem.
In the States, I believe it's
Yes.
like become a police officer. I just looked up for the Canadian RCMP, it's 26 weeks, which is still very short. If you go to a place like Switzerland, it's up to 3 years.
Switzerland, you're shooting from the time you're a kid.
That's true. The guns, every able-bodied person has to have a gun in the military training.
Only males, because they're a bunch of sexist bastards.
See, we in Canada don't have a gun control problem because we don't have a gun control problem.
So they ain't got no fucking guns?
We don't have no guns.
Well, they're coming up from the U.S. So we
Yeah,
are
some of them
seeing a
are,
lot
a lot
more
of them
gun
are.
violence in Canada now, especially in Toronto. Here in Calgary, there's a restaurant a Vietnamese restaurant that we like to go to, was a triple killing one night.
Yeah, but what's the...
Asian gang violence.
Does it just seem like that to you, Randy, or is there
What?
like?
No, we know that guns are coming up from the U.S.
Are these people that legally own them, or people?
No.
That bring
Oh God, no.
And
No.
also, have you seen the prices of food of Calgary in those restaurants? It's murder, man.
Yeah, well, Calgary, Canada's an expensive place to live.
I
It
think,
really is.
You
I
know,
think we only have a couple hundred gun murders every year, though,
About
right?
200.
Yeah.
About 200.
And
That being said, I'm pretty sure Canada has more guns per capita than the U.S.
yeah, but they're all hunting rifles.
No, actually, the U.S. have more than us though.
Oh
But-
yeah, by far.
No, listen, guys, that's not tonight's topic either. Or unless you want to go into that now.
Oh no, I remember having this argument before with you guys. No, we're not going there.
Oh, okay, I haven't had this argument with you guys before.
We are not going there. I remember having an argument with somebody. Was it you guys? When somebody was talking about gun control, and it was like just went off the rails.
not me.
Oh, it wasn't me. I've never had. This is my first time ever having a discussion like this.
Well, you're excused from that accusation, but.
Hey, we got get rid of the white guy.
Goodbye, white. We're all white. Oh shoot.
We need a black midget lesbian transgender or something.
Eskimo.
There you go.
Yeah.
The closest thing to
A
that.
black transvestite Nazi Eskimo.
robot.
That's
Call
Well,
it-
Tyler, your friends list is like 5,000 long. Don't you have some friends?
Yeah, don't you have any
But
transvestite?
I offended all of them in the first 5 minutes of the show. They're gone.
Down to 100 friends now.
Yeah.
Times a factor of.
Okay, so I mean, you can chalk up the statistics to racism or poverty and education, and I came up with ideas for all of those. What do? You do what works. What's this kind of?
Well, you
stuff
have to
like?
find out what works, right?
Well, I mean, we know that free education in European countries freaking works. Same with free healthcare, which the States doesn't have. I'd be shooting people too if I was losing my house because I got cancer. Couldn't afford it.
We're all Canadian too, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I think
Okay,
so.
okay.
I'm a dual.
Okay.
I'm a dual. But yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
No, the only reason I mentioned just because we just don't have the problems they have in any stretch of our imagination.
We have different problems. I mean, one of the problems with Canadian healthcare is the geographic, huge. Like we have very huge rural areas and very. Only
let me go after you say this.
Go ahead.
No, I live in a rural area, and I'm trying to access a family doctor, and I can't get one. 1 to 5 year waiting list. That's blowing my mind. They're willing. The government's going to pay for a driver to drive me 2 hours each way to my doctor in Mississauga from where I'm living now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
It's hard in some places to.
Again, this is not the topic for tonight, though.
No, yeah, and I'm no expert on it, so I don't even. I'm not an expert on anything that I've talked about tonight. Yeah. But my PhD is in chemistry, and there you go.
We do have some problems that are kind of similar, like with our Aboriginals and stuff. Like we had the schools in there was a terrible that actually is unique to Canada. The residential schools. That's totally unique to Canada.
Man.
If I may put my opinion in here for half a second, I think we have a lot of the same problems the Americans have. We just have reacted differently to them. The Americans have as well.
We have analogous ones.
Oh yeah, of course. It's not exactly
more than the same, but we also have that, like I just mentioned, the huge disparity geographically. I mean, there's no, let's say that song, Canada's rocks and trees and trees and rocks and rocks and trees, and it's you have the occasional town. Alberta is one of the more evenly populated places, at least the southern half, but northern half, nothing there.
Hello.
I think we lost it. Oh.
No, that was just a natural lull. I think it happened. Listen. Wow. Apparently, it was in psychology.
That is
when you're having a conversation, every 20 minutes or so, with a 2-person or 3-person conversation, every 20 minutes or so, there's a natural lull that just happens, just like that.
Well, that was a full stop.
I made that shit right up, so I don't know if you'll believe that.
Not always fact. And there's only one road in Canada. Follow the only road.
The Trans.
Can I touch on the residential schools?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Oh, dude, man. So my uncle is a film producer, and his company produced a movie called Where the Spirit Lives. And if you guys want to Google that up, you can. It's called Where the Spirit Lives, and it won awards. It won at least one, maybe 2 Junos. Is that Juno? Is that our Oscar?
The Junos,
Oscar? Yeah. And it's just a phenomenal. Anyway, check it out. It touches upon all of that, and so I have a deep understanding, I can't say I have a deep understanding. That movie gives a perspective that I grew up not understanding at all.
The residential school situation is, if anybody's looking for a reason why we shouldn't have faith-based programs, the residential schools are it.
Absolutely.
This is where First Nations children were sent, and I guess gentrified, I guess would be the way, abused. And what was the percentage that died in these schools? It was something ridiculous. 20% or something.
I don't know the numbers.
Yeah, I can't.
They were trying to get rid of them.
Let's ask Mike a question. Mike, how do you feel about, since you're in Toronto, how do you feel about the Union of Teachers trying to ban Johnny McDonald's from some of these schools because he had a hand in the...
that is
maybe
ridiculous.
Not banning him from the premises, but taking
his name
off.
He's gonna dig his ass up out of his grave and move him.
He is gonna be pissed.
Would you let Mike...
Two things. A, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, and B, I don't live in Toronto anymore.
What's happening is that schools that were named after our first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, because he was involved with the Louis Riel rebellion and it was very racist towards the Métis, that they're trying to get rid of all these schools named after John A. Macdonald.
Right.
Did they really know any better? We do now.
Is it anachronistic to apply our knowledge to the past and judge them based on what we know?
You cannot judge people in the past on the moral standards that we have today.
I don't agree with that. I think you just judge those bastards.
let me ask you guys,
They were-
what do you guys, what's your opinion? Like, I haven't been following, so my opinion is I'm glad they're taking down they took down all those statues down in the States,
Yes.
the southern states.
That's a very different situation, though.
So that's where, yeah, is that a comparable analogy?
No,
I don't think so myself, no.
We did not have, like...
Same idea.
We were on the tail end of slavery, and we helped the slaves escape. Like, it was totally different. Like,
No, I know that.
As a country, it was before we even formed. As a country, we never, ever, Kevin, ever. Go ahead, Kev.
I just want to say, this past week in Cornwall, Ontario, they actually unveiled a statue to the U.S. Civil War in Canada, because statistically there was actually about 40,000 Canadian soldiers that participated in this war, and on both sides. So they actually decided to honor, I guess, our participation in the war, and this actually happened very recently.
Wait, you're fighting for the North?
And the South. Both sides.
Well, I don't know what the numbers were. But...
I don't know what the numbers were either, but 40,000 Canadian soldiers apparently participated in that war.
Voluntarily?
Well, yeah.
Just kind of walked over there and said, yeah.
Oh, in the American War, yes, yeah. No, yeah, in all wars, Irish did too. Irish sent armies over to many. They defend Canada at one point, I think.
There's a long history of Canadians in the
Fools.
U.S. military.
Like you!
Like
myself.
this guy.
Okay, so...
There's about 30,000 joined the U.S. military during the Vietnam conflict.
My uncle was one of them. But what happened to him was he was stationed in Seoul. And
Was it 30,000? Sorry to interrupt. I'd like to hear the story.
No, yeah.
Was it 30 or 10? I thought it was 10,000.
I got to interrupt you.
Hold on.
One sec. So we are on social justice warriors and Black Lives Matter and everything like that. I know this sort of has something to do.
Well, it's
Actually,
60s
Vietnam,
social
yeah,
justice
ties
warriors.
right into racism. Oh my God, yeah. Vietnam is an excellent topic for racism.
We have
So I'd love to hear the story though too.
Well, it's not really much of a story. They wouldn't let him go fight in Vietnam. He was really pissed off. They just left him in Seoul, where the rest of his unit went. He was mad that they didn't let him go.
Well, that sort of stuff. Okay, we have a caller, Edward Bundy, who's going to be coming up next. So thank you very much for calling us, Brad.
While you try to...
Mike, sorry. Mike.
Oh yeah. You want me to hang up?
Yeah,
well, do you have anything in closing?
Tyler's an idiot.
Yeah!
All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
We'll talk to you later on the thread afterwards. And we have a comment from Elizabeth Ron. He says that we can only judge people on their actions if they were cultural norms at the time. Speaking to the anachronistic thing that we were talking about there. So we got Edward coming up next, and while we get that happening...
I have a question. Is there anything wrong with my solutions that I proposed regarding the free education and work training and that sort of thing, like, for these solutions? I don't know how we can prevent social justice warriors, maybe teach logical fallacies in elementary school.
I think that should be done. Like, yeah, at a young age, absolutely.
Yeah.
We just introduced something similar to it, and I actually have the email from the Ministry of Education out here. They're trying to teach science and skepticism, like the scientific method. Not sure how well it's going to go over, but it's still pretty cool.
All right, I think we got Edward Bundy on the line here. Can you hear us, Edward?
Yes, I can.
Oh, excellent. Right on. Welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what's your point of view? And
what color are you?
Yeah, what color are you?
We have to identify his politics.
Yeah, sure. Well, my real name is actually Daniel Schmidt. I'm actually a troll, so Edward Bundy is actually my troll name.
Cool.
I'm quite popular on Facebook. I have a variety of opinions, and I actually have a variety of personalities, but my main personality is atheist, liberal-leaning. I'm more anti-Christian than atheist myself. I grew up at a boarding school, Catholic boarding school, all boys.
Ooh.
I'm 32. I'm a food truck manager in D.C., and I'm a white, crusty white male. I'm married to actually a black woman currently. I got married about a month ago, so I'm newly married.
Oh, what color?
Yeah.
I know.
So that's a little bit about me.
Are you tall though?
I'm about 5'10".
Yeah. That's above average. All right.
Yeah.
We'll listen then.
I'm short.
Who said that? I didn't...
That was me. No, that was actually that was our caller.
Keep going, Daniel.
It's kind of funny though, because the racists who call on my profile on Facebook, they call me Ted Bundy, and it's really Edward Bundy, and I made up Bundy the last name after Al Bundy from Married with Children, so they don't even get the reference, so they just call me Ted Bundy like I'm some terrorist. So they fail the reference joke, so it's just funny all around, you know.
Yeah, I got to admit, I went for Ted too.
Yeah.
And his other profile, Jeremy Dahmer.
Jeremy Dahmer.
Right.
Jeremy Dahmer.
Right on. So what do you got to say here?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, someone actually who I was just, taking through a feed mentioned if you support Black Lives Matter or if you're, toward that support, feel free to message something. So I said, sure, I'll respond. And I've actually been on talk radio since I was like 7. I actually grew up listening to the Adam Carolla show on Live 105.3 through boarding school. And that was actually one of our only outlets outside of our own little religious world. So I kind of grew up with that from my early ages. And then now he's no longer even on radio. So I grew up listening to Adam Carolla and Drew Pinsky. And then I've kind of like formed my own opinion through just listening and doing my own research. But yeah, I do support overall Black Lives Matter. And I have supported them before I met my wife. So I actually had a racist, for example, because I have a picture of myself with my black wife, pretty much said, have you done reparations all over your wife's face, for example, as in a way of saying that the only reason why I support Black Lives Matter is because of my black wife. I know, right? That was actually a fairly creative rebuttal or insult in my opinion. I like the one where somebody says, "Were you there?" This is one of my favorite responses. Or suggests that I, jump in front of traffic is another great one, or on a coming traffic. Yeah, I get that a lot too. Or I also get the Antichrist and the Antichrist. There's a fairly popular troll on Facebook called Luke Lefebvre.
Yeah,
have you ever heard of him?
Yeah,
He's a yellow meme guy.
Yellow meme guy.
Yeah, he actually has a phone number from his church where if you can actually physically call him. I actually haven't called him yet, but I'd love to debate him one day. But yeah, I do support Black Lives. I do support Black Lives Matter. I think that they are. I'm not as far as like to actually support them enough to want to like go to a rally to like get beat up for Black people, but I understand. I understand their message. I think their message is actually kind of a little scattered now, but I think they need to do a better job of regrouping themselves to like actually have a centralized message, because with the recent violence, as far as with the Antifa movement and stuff like that. It can kind of seem like a little diluted, especially considering the high number of police officers that have actually died from people who say they just hate cops. But I think overall their message of police violence is actually on target.
There has been a lot of police brutality in general.
Correct.
In the U.S. There's no question. And it comes back to what we were talking before with training and de-escalation tactics that just they don't have the training, especially like small police forces. They don't have the funds.
Yeah, I was actually a little child when in LA. Actually, I got to see O.J. Simpson's house when the murders were going on. I was actually there, like pretty much right at the time when he was caught on video doing that whole chase scene. I was actually in LA with my father. He's a celebrity stalker, so as soon as he heard that whole scene was going on, O.J. Simpson, and he actually said, "Oh, we got to drive to his house." So where that is going is like when that actually happened, like back then, when you actually watch that video, even when you watch the video of Rodney King, for example, like that is just so rare and obscure. Like you didn't see that happening a lot. Like that. Whoever recorded that video of Rodney King like had an actual handheld camcorder, whereas now, because of technology, I think people are really starting to wake up because everyone now has a cell phone that they can record live of anything.
Yeah.
So it's just too hard for police to just sit there and say, okay, well, it's an isolated incident. Now we have actually like 8 incidences in 1 year of this happening, to where people I think are kind of now waking up.
Yeah, there's definitely that. People have their cell phones out. The ACLU has a app that you can send video automatically to them.
Yeah, I have a comment here from David John Linwood. He says that Europe has shown that educating the population and having a livable wage is far cheaper in the long run than supporting an unskilled population and having a large percentage of its citizens in jail. It's counterproductive, and it seems very obvious.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it does work. That's what we.
And as far as, and actually, I love listening to Fox News because I love their. I feel better about myself. Like every time I
yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things. And then like I love listening to C-SPAN. Like when you get fired from a job or when you like lose hours for like you're off for the whole day and you don't really have anything to do because I recently moved here. I don't have that many friends yet. I turn on the C-SPAN and I have some right-wing, nut job calling on the radio, and I feel really much better about myself about how,
I think that's why reality TV has become popular.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is.
Those thugs get what they deserve, and Michael Brown, he went after that guy, and they love bringing up Michael Brown because that was one case where he actually was shown to actually charge the officer. But what about all the other ones where you had a taillight out? Where that guy from South Carolina just ran away from the police because he didn't want to pay child support, and the officer just in cold blood opened fire, 7 shots. There's actually an African-American couple in the car, and 7 officers fired like 40 bullets, and they only charged 1 officer, and because they couldn't determine which bullet actually hit one particular body, the actual officer was not charged with murder. I mean, there's too many cases of information out there for you to just sit there and you don't even have a case anymore when you sit there and say, okay, they just got what they deserved. I mean, and the people who say that is really kind of borderline racist, because if it was a white person or if it was anybody else or even an Asian person who sometimes they think they're white, will just sit there and this when it comes to a black person say, okay, you're automatically guilty because you're black. And with that kind of attitude, that's what's kind of going on right now. And it's a little bit of everything right now with that.
Yeah, and of course that is racist. That is totally racist.
How are we? Oh, Dad.
Go ahead.
How are we wrong? Like, is there anything that anybody here has said that you think is wrong?
Yeah, that'd be good.
I don't know. I unfortunately, this is actually the first time I've listened to your show. I've actually done several podcasts myself. I'm actually thinking about doing it back up. My last name is actually Schmidt. I was thinking of doing a segment called Schmidt Happens, but I don't have anyone doing it with me yet, so I don't want to do it by myself. But if you actually had a link or something where I can actually follow, I'd love to follow some more talking points as far as if you want to have me on in the future or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Just Randy was saying he doesn't support Black Lives Matter, right, Randy?
Yeah, I don't support the leadership. I should really clarify. I don't support the leadership of Black Lives Matter. Most of the people who are in Black Lives Matter that go to rallies, etc., are perfectly fine. My problem is with the upper echelon, and they're very quiet about their support for people like Asada Shakur. But it's part of their politics. And
the one thing I actually will say that I'll actually disagree with them on is I actually my wife and I used to live in San Francisco, and I think that in San Francisco and in the Bay Area, for example, there's less police violence than, let's say, in some of the places around here. And I think in one instance, they actually, because of a police shooting that may have happened, it may have been Ferguson, some angry, really angry black women, they may have been the leaders or whatever, and they just got into traffic on the Bay Bridge and in the middle of rush hour, and they locked hands, and they chained themselves in the middle of oncoming traffic. I mean, from a healthcare perspective, if there's somebody, like, let's say a fire truck going by or an ambulance going by, and there's somebody dying who may just be black, you're like therefore shooting your own self in the foot with that message.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Yep.
By letting that person die because you're angry at that particular moment. I think
Kevin disagree.
I'm going to disagree with Dan and Randy here. Yeah, of course, this could happen, but the odds of that are slim to none. And the reason why people are blocking traffic, no matter what the protest is, because to bring attention to the protest. If you just show that to a free speech zone, you're essentially ignored. And that goes against...
I don't agree with that. No.
No, neither.
I think you're attracting... I think there is such a thing as attracting bad attention. And I don't agree that, the rallies in Charlottesville before the unfortunate attempted mass murder, vehicular mass murder, may that asshole rotten hell, they were getting good coverage. It was peaceful. It was the cause is right. I don't agree that they don't get the coverage.
Yeah, and if you actually go to PBS, I don't know if it's still for free, but I actually watched a great documentary on the Black Panther, who I knew very little about because I was born white, and I've actually was like kind of like, okay, well, like I was expecting them to come across like, I hate whitey, and I was expecting there to be no white members, and when you actually watch a documentary of the actual people who survived and the remaining members who are left alive, what the police did to them was quite shady and quite horrendous. I mean, we don't have that type of behavior now, but there's still a lot that needs to be done to actually change within the police community, and I actually fully support that. Whereas back then, the police actually walked into the Black Panthers' house and just opened fire and didn't care if there were women, children, and they ended up shooting him dead. And that happened with so many of those people who were Black Panther leaders, and very few of them are left alive, and many of them actually served life prison sentences. So I don't think it's really that strong of a movement right now to like really get people aware of what is actually happening enough for there to be about change, because we just got someone elected in office where everything that Obama has basically done for the last 8 years is basically all going to be reversed. I mean, we need to be focusing on legalizing marijuana. We need to be basically focusing on so many other things to help make Black lives basically easier for or just basically minority lives for everybody, rather than just say, this is about police. I think it's a broader issue here too as well.
I'd like to know the numbers though. Like, we're talking about cops killing black people and white people, and I understand that the numbers might be higher for white people, but not percentage-wise.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know the name of the book, but my wife is actually reading a book. I was actually contemplating getting the book by the tennis player who's biracial, who was actually caught on film being tackled by police for having mistaken identity. I was actually contemplating getting his book because he was recently on PBS giving an interview about being mistaken for somebody else. And anyways, in one of the other books that my wife had, they said that out of 10,000 officers who actually killed somebody, regardless of what the reason is, only 54 of them were charged, and there's even a smaller percentage of the 54 that actually went to jail and did time. So I think the issue here is also not only are they killing black people that are unarmed, which there isn't actually a conclusive study about that. You may have a biracial person who may not be in that study. It's really, I don't think they ask me what my race is when I am pulled over by the police, or if there's an actual murder. I don't know how conclusive that is, but within that study alone, you have way too many police officers who are treated at a higher value than actual individual citizens, and I think that's where people are getting upset with. And instead of actually them serving jail time, they're just given like a multi-million-dollar settlement, and that's basically assuming guilt. But they just have so much money, that's our money too, that they're just handing out, and to me that is equally as wrong.
Well, you need to realize they give them a gun, no training, and say, go out and fight crime, and these cops are terrified, and they're just not well trained. Like, that's probably why they're shooting at any spark. They just shoot because they're freaking terrified.
Yeah, that's what it doesn't get enough, doesn't really get mentioned as often as it might, is that, yeah, a lot of these cops are freaking terrified.
They're not well trained.
Not always.
Are there developed countries that don't have these problems? What's causing that?
And also, there's another point I'd like to bring up here. This is an emotional issue. So as much as that being skeptical and showing stats, let's talk to religion, for example, doesn't necessarily sway somebody because religion attacks you on an emotional level. We have to expect the same kind of response on this situation with the police, because it attacks you on an emotional level as well.
That's
so
right.
Maybe quoting stats and saying, well, the numbers don't point, that doesn't answer the issue to them. They need an emotional response. They need to be comforted. They need to realize, that yes, we are working towards that, but so far maybe the skeptical community is not doing a good job at that.
Well, you could say the same thing about terrorism. We tell these people you're more likely to get hit by lightning than killed in a terrorist attack, and they're still terrified of terrorists.
They're still terrified because they haven't answered the fear.
Well, then we have to teach this to kids at a very young age, which is what I've been saying this whole time.
I know, but in the meantime, response for the population that's past the age of kids.
You just try to explain it. When they don't get it, you say, "You're an idiot." Go away.
You'd make an awesome teacher.
I know. Or I just stare.
I've known teachers like you. I hate them.
You try to get through to them. There's that awesome book, Randy. You got to check it out if you haven't. The Illustrated Book of Bad Arguments.
Oh, okay.
It's like logical fallacies.
Yeah, I've got a few of those books.
That's what fixed me believing all this stupid stuff.
No, you're not fixed, man.
It's compelling for some people.
I had so many stupid beliefs that were based on not understanding science and logical fallacies. Just those two things.
I used to be really afraid of spiders, and then I thought about it. I was like, I just don't live in an area with any really dangerous spiders. They can't.
Yeah. Did anybody play the Ouija board growing up? I actually thought that.
Yeah.
I actually literally thought a woman with a knife was going to stab me in the middle of the night.
Bloody Mary.
And I stayed up all night when I was 14 and cried in the middle of the living room. I said, okay, well, if I get stabbed by someone who's going to come back to life, I'm going to make sure I get stabbed in broad light in the middle of the living room. So therefore, everyone will know that it was that witch who stabbed me. And I actually stayed up all night.
Here, actually, sorry.
Hold on a sec. But if they taught you the scientific method, you would have said, let's get two blindfolded people and get them to play the Ouija board and see what happens.
And then you turn the Ouija board upside down.
Well, the whole thing about the Ouija board is if you're with a group of people and you actually feel it move, you actually really think that it's moved by spirit. So they really have that whole thought mind game down on it as far as that goes. But then when I actually try to ask it specific questions about my childhood or whatever, it had no clue. So I think as far as that goes, I was kind of like already kind of skeptical. But you're 14 years old and you grew up in a boarding school where you're pretty much taught that if you play with yourself, you're going to go to hell. Like that whole part is probably added to it. And it wasn't until after that point I realized I started questioning things.
Yeah, good.
What's the comment?
So we got a comment from David John Linwood. He says that pertaining to standing in the middle of traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, if people are inconvenienced, many will take an opposing stand, even if they were supporters before or on the fence.
Yeah.
That is quite a possibility.
Unless it's a really positive thing of looking behind
it's
it.
like, wow, they actually put neon signs up and everything. So it's
I
kind of a show.
think they should be trying to inconvenience government people and not your average
By the way,
person.
Lucy says you're right.
I think there's a halfway measure here. I think, for example,
John
you don't
Tucker.
need to block the
Right.
entire Golden
Lucy
Bridge.
says Kevin's right.
But what you can do is block one lane. So
Yeah, but when you actually, I don't know if you're ever from the Bay Area or if you're ever planning on going there. The last time I went to the Bay Area, the traffic was so bad. It's like an hour to 2 hours at certain points to cross the Golden Gate Bridge or the Bay Bridge, and it's getting so bad now. Like if that were to happen, even like if the trailer pulled over one time, there's actually cows got loose and ran across the 680 freeway.
That was me.
It was just like God damn it. So it's like whatever their cause was, I'm sure some black person was in traffic was like, you God damn it. I supported you, now I don't, now I'm late for my job, and now I'm fired. So,
but right there, you're still using anecdotal evidence. You're using your experience yourself. And if we actually looked at the grand numbers, maybe we'd have a different result.
Yeah, if we divorce it from emotion and look at the actual facts.
It worked with Martin Luther King Jr., didn't it? He changed quite a bit by boycotting places. But
that's the way to do it.
He was boycotting the assholes.
Because you're not inconveniencing everybody, except for the people who all of a sudden realize that you're not giving them business anymore.
Speaking as a person who's been to several protests and still does, for example, even a little protest here in this little town of Abbotsford, if you got all your pickets and you're marching around the city square, nobody notices everything. And all of a sudden you cross in the middle of the street and traffic stops on both sides, you get a blurb in the newspaper. That's the difference.
Yeah.
A blurb in an Abbotsford newspaper.
Or you go on a hunger strike. I love those.
Yeah.
I can always go on a hunger strike and lose a few pounds.
We are very small.
I'm using a small example here, but that's the point of it, right? If you just play by the rules all the time, you're not going to get noticed. Nobody's going to think anything about it, and you're just going to be ignored.
So you have to get
right. It's a fine line. That you walk.
True, and I think some people actually on the right who've had a history of violence and using violent tactics, people will just assume that, okay, well, because Martin Luther King did it this way, that means therefore all black people should do things this way, or that means all people on the left should do things this way. Well, this generation is different now than it was back then, and sometimes violence does happen. I mean, when Martin Luther King actually died in I think '68. People rioted because they lost someone that was like the only outlet that they had for getting the voice out. So sometimes I think in some cases the violent outbursts are actually sometimes necessary to get the message across.
We don't know that helped though. That might not have helped, right?
I don't know. I think in Ferguson, in the case where one of my favorite memes was they were gonna Little Caesars was gonna give out free pizza that day, but because Ferguson came and burned the place down, they can't give out free pizza anymore. But I think it really brought awareness to that when that happened, that police were really kind of persecuting people. Like they actually were targeting people just for crossing the street and giving them fines. And this one man, I remember watching a video of him on one of the news channels, said that he was pulled over 10 times for doing nothing wrong. And at some point, it's just going to be a boiling point in that community, and we're not from there, so we really can't relate to where it's just going to tip over. And that's the thing what happened in Ferguson.
Maybe the cops are not racist.
I used to get pulled over all the time for being a kid driving a Firebird, and they did it every night. I think actually it was maybe to steal all my beer, but.
Okay, what's the solution though? It's great to identify all this stuff, but how do we stop people from being social justice warriors, regressive left? All these different things that we're complaining about. What do we do about it? Because I gave
I think the gentleman, the tennis player, I think his name is James something. I forget his name. He actually was asked this on PBS. He brought up a really good point. When the city of New York actually arrested him, he sued them. He actually didn't ask for any money in return. He actually asked for community oversight and a community board actually monitoring police. I think that the body cameras should need to be on at all times. I
agree.
Why would Black Lives Matter want them off?
You got me. I don't know.
The police officers actually should not even have an option to turn them off. And time and time again, when a serious incident like that woman being shot from Australia in the chest, in the car, if their body cameras were on at all times, they shouldn't have the option to turn them off. If they're having that option, that's basically pointless. Our taxes are being wasted on them turning it off.
I agree.
And better training. I don't know what they deal with.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that he brought up was the community oversight, as far as independent citizens actually having a board to be involved with the actual police instead of it basically being us versus them. If people, like individual community people, were more involved with the police in that aspect, I think it would be a lot better than this having it say, well, all police officers are evil. Well, if you had a community board that's independent of the police actual force, say, hey, well, they actually weren't in this case, I think that would cause a lot better relations than it would be the way we have things now.
Well, I think that there should be a proactive effort on the part of police forces to extend, offers of creating a relationship with all groups. I mean, that's the CPS model here, and I think that it's something that a lot of police forces could learn from.
Absolutely.
And what about the social justice and regressive left things, since those are the topics for today?
Yeah,
what are we going to do?
Just for people who have just joined us or whatnot, what we were kind of going on is social justice warriors basically are the people who whine for the sake of whining, but never do anything about it. Whereas a social activist would be somebody who notices the problem and then does something proactive to fix it. So the Black Lives Matter thing, I'm kind of up in the air either way.
I don't know enough.
I don't know enough about it because we don't get that up here often. But I think that they disrupting things that have nothing to do with them and then claiming it as part of their movement is not the right thing to do. Like they disrupted the Vancouver Gay Pride Parade.
Same with Toronto.
Pride Parade, and I think something in Calgary too, and everything.
No, I wasn't Black Lives Matter in Calgary.
Oh yeah, the police up here and the gay community have just been patching things up. Like they've made progress. They used to be assholes. It got way better up here, and then all of a sudden, Black Lives Matter comes in and starts rehashing old wounds and stuff and opening them back up. Just not.
So
I don't think that's
what do we do? Get some leaflets that say, and take them to the grade 12 schools that say, stop being a regressive left white social justice pussy?
Like the CIA in Vietnam.
You have to get a trigger warning first.
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning. Well, you know what? It's a societal problem, unfortunately, and you know,
Is there
you
problem-
can't
is there
play
problem-
ball hockey anymore on the street.
I know.
Hockey sucks.
That is the exact kind of over protectionism that causes
That's
things.
just like the kids who have had their lemonade stand smashed by the police.
Yeah, just
That's been happening like
why?
everywhere now.
Yeah. But there was a really cool video I saw where the police officer was like actually called to these kids who were playing basketball, and it's like, so we got a noise complaint, and they said that you guys are being loud.
And then
up
they
here.
started playing with
He
them.
grabs the ball and he starts playing, and he's like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to bring backup. And he brings a whole bunch of people with Shaquille O'Neal or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
That's a commercial, right?
And then
No,
somebody,
it's true.
no,
That's
that was
real?
true. And then somebody had also mentioned the wheelchair project thing, Operation Wheelchair in Vancouver. Somebody had stolen money off of somebody in a wheelchair, so the officers were trying to crack down on it, and they ended up with more money in their change purse than they started with, and nobody like gave them a hard time or anything. It was like just Vancouverites were too nice, you know, like.
But it's still the exception.
It's the exception, yeah, definitely.
I think we don't see the good stuff. It doesn't make the news.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of it.
It's represented
Because
you know?
we wouldn't watch it as much.
That's because it's run for
And
profit,
that's
right?
That may not be true in America. I don't know, but up here, it's. Yeah, I was at a anti-Islam immigration rally. I was just monitoring it for the podcast, and the police were there. They were so professional. You know, they're there to do a job. These people are using their right to free speech, and there were a bunch of people who were yelling back and using their right to free speech. And the Calgary police.
Here in my town, there's actually a guy who has his sign up and it says, "I'm a Muslim, ask me anything." And I actually have not asked him a question yet, but I think I might one day. But there's actually two of them, and I think that would be a fun thing to do one day, just like do a podcast of that.
Yeah, no doubt. So one last thing I was going to say about that too is, you know, if you're doing a big protest, that's great or whatever to get attention to a cause. But what's everyone going to remember is if a couple people throw a bottle through a window, it's a riot, and then everyone's going to remember that little incident over top of what everyone was trying to say. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
The message is lost.
I just
The
don't know.
message is
I don't know
lost,
if other countries that don't have these problems, like Denmark and Norway and Sweden and Switzerland, do they not have these problems?
They may not be quite as diverse.
Well, because they have a higher standard of living. I don't know what you guys think about CCTV cameras. It's kind of like body cams. I mean, you talk to people. I talk to people in England. They're like, I can't imagine not having them.
Don't forget that you have a populace in the United States which is heavily armed, and
Yeah, in England they have no guns, and I think in Australia they
Oh my
have
God.
something similar. Right?
yeah,
I think it's the lack of education and training for guns that's a big problem. It's not
Like the woman who actually was a protester or running for government like not too long ago. She died because like some right wing nut job ran up to her and shot her. Like he actually had to use an old revolver from like World War II. He actually had to wait for it to load. He tried to shoot her like multiple shots, but that's like all he had on him. So like the gun laws are way different than here.
Single shot weapon?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's also a point here that needs to be made about the Americans with their guns. Government in most countries, government has the monopoly on violence. And when the British rule started disarming the population, it arrived about the same time where the American Revolution happened. So this disarmament of the population never happened in the States. This is why they've got this Second Amendment, why they're hugging their guns so tightly, and they grew up with it as a country.
No, Switzerland has more, though.
I
The
know.
Second Amendment was written under very different circumstances.
yeah. Switzerland is different. Everybody has to be a member of the military, and they go for repeated training.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the repeated training and all that kind of stuff. 'Cause it's hard training, right? It's not like
Yeah.
you're PA.
And I think it's the same way in Israel. They have to do 2 years of
Yes,
service.
they do. Yeah.
And I don't know if they have those problems or not over there. I have to look at Israel's statistics.
I have a question, and actually this is kind of going to wrap the show up, I guess.
Yeah, we're almost out of time.
So does everyone have like an idea of how Black Lives Matter could do something differently?
I think the first thing they should do is call it Black Lives Matter 2.
Part 2?
No, not part 2. 2, I mean as well.
Yes, as well.
No, actually, it's a good point. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that confuse saying Black Lives Matter meaning only Black Lives Matter, and that's not the case.
Because if you use proper English,
Well, it's like
yeah,
it's like cancer
Blacks.
commercials when they talk about prostate cancer. I'm not like, oh my god, you didn't mention all the other cancers.
I know.
You're talking to a population of Caucasians in the
fucking
States that
idiots.
feels under attack.
Yeah.
So you have to specify. You have to put a problem to specify something that's completely obvious to us.
Okay, so we tell them to block up government buildings, not people's roads and all that,
And keep it where it is. Like if a black person
and
gets
demand
shot,
body cam.
yeah.
They also need to have a head representative where that person specifically goes on TV to defend themselves more so than anybody else. So they need to have like a pyramid of relations. Whereas I don't think they have that now, and they need to do better marketing.
Well, they need to lose the Marxism.
They need to do better marketing to make themselves more approachable to non-white people.
How are police elected though? Like the chief of police and his little.
Yeah, that's a piecemeal thing, right? Like judges are elected in some places. It's very piecemeal.
By the average Joe.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, then do that with the police.
And as far as like Trump getting in,
They
Trump
do.
with his like racist behavior and everything,
Yeah,
Trump
well-
got in because people didn't vote. That's why.
Yeah, that was another factor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. The people in Portland, there was a riot right after the when Trump won the election, and it was turned violent. They arrested 127 people, I believe. 80 or so of those people didn't vote.
Yeah, that happened at the Guns N' Roses concert too.
How the hell do you justify your violence at being upset over Trump's win? Which is, yeah, you can probably, I understand that. But you didn't freaking vote.
Yeah,
They don't think it
I
counts.
think a lot of people were like, "Oh, there's no way he's going to get it. I'm going to watch TV. Like I'm going to watch the elections with popcorn in my
Well,
lap."
and the electoral college, they don't feel like their vote counts, so they just don't vote.
Yeah, the people in Middle America, like it's like, yeah, the way that it's set up there, I don't understand.
And
I
it won't
believe-
change. It won't
I
change.
believe it does count because it's not one government. You got the Republicans and the Liberals. They're trying to bust each
Yeah.
other.
If you get
For
into
being crooked.
presidency under the laws of the Electoral College, why would you change it? You know?
Well, it's worse than that. Places like Wyoming, which have swing electoral college votes, they are never going to give it up.
Yeah.
I mean, they are overrepresented in the electoral college.
How would you even get rid of it if you wanted to? Like
You
you'd have
can't.
to-
You can't. It's constitutional, and the mechanism just won't allow it.
Yeah, our
Well,
prime
the-
minister backed out on it too.
The way Americans will stop being afraid of their government is if they start participating in the politics of the country.
Yeah.
So a good
And
political class.
you
yeah.
have a voice,
You can't
use
sit
it.
by the sidelines and watch things happen and get angry about it.
So a good political class in high school.
At the very least.
You know, you're gonna
Yeah,
start-
my sister, for example, I asked her who the vice president was. She didn't know.
Yeah.
Who's,
So
who-
that,
who's the president of Canada, Daniel?
And the vice president scares me more than Donald Trump.
I know.
well,
Who's the,
right now it's Mike Pence, but at that time I asked her who it was under Obama, and she said she didn't know, and it's Joe Biden. So,
well, who's the president of Canada, Daniel?
I think I know it's not. Macron is the one of France. I unfortunately saw him speak here, and unfortunately I do not know his name on the top of my head.
We don't have. We don't
Yeah,
have.
it was a trick question.
Sorry.
What a bastard asking that question.
Yeah, we totally diss our callers all the time.
I know him though. It's
Yeah,
Justin Trudeau.
Actually, I saw Justin Trudeau a couple of weeks ago. I was at the University of Saskatchewan. It was the first day of classes or something, and I see this bunch of black Suburbans and guys in very poorly fitting suits with rubber-soled shoes, and I knew right away Justin Trudeau's here, because who else is going to ride around in a cavalcade with an RCMP security detail? And so I got a picture of him.
And then go running around Stanley Park by himself.
Justin Bieber?
No, not Justin Bieber.
God, you guys, you Americans, you can keep Justin Bieber, please,
Yeah.
keep him.
And Celine Dion.
And Celine Dion, yeah.
I will kill him. No problem.
We don't want him.
You guys can have
That's why we gave him to you.
Yeah, thanks.
I think we're going to wrap this up then.
Yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Thanks you for our callers who were on and off.
And actually, waited around for the
Waited around
technology.
for the technology to work, and thank you very much, Mr. Tyson. Thank you.
Yeah,
Glad to have you-
thank our callers too, because I learned things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, everyone.
Very great, man.
Send me
We'll
a
see you
message,
soon.
Daniel. We'll talk about your podcast.
Okay, great.
And the discussion will continue in our feed afterwards. If you care to have some comments, thank you all for watching, and good night. Oh, one thing, everybody who's still watching, check out Pogie Beach. It's really cool.
Oh yeah, hey, don't forget to check out our podcast. You know, Legion
Oh
of
yeah,
Reason Diversion.
what's your?
Yeah, geez, I gotta plug this, man. Yeah,
Wow,
Legion of Reason
man.
Diversion. We're
Go ahead.
there. We go. Yeah, the Legion of Reason Diversion. We're on YouTube and iTunes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'm on, and I'll be on the show on Sunday, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we're gonna. I'll find some fun topics for you to comment on. I'm sure.
Bottom of the barrel there, Randy, with this, or
He must be if he's got Tyler.
Who
Yeah.
randomly offered to have me on the radio? Thank you very much, Francis.
Yeah, George Clooney doesn't exist.
Just give me a heads up so I can go to the liquor store first.
Yeah, he needs to have
Cool.
liquor.
What are you bringing me? What are you bringing me, man?
Yeah, that's a good question. What are you bringing?
Crown
in?
Royal.
Crown Royal.
Oh, that'll do. Yeah.
I'll mail you some Hell's Gate beer. What's the other one?
Is that a Vancouver brewery?
What's the other one that Aaron Rod likes? The
Wrath of God.
The Hand of God?
Wrath of God.
Wrath of God. That's another beer.
And he's going to be hitting us pretty darn quick. Thanks again, Randy. You're awesome. Take care.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.